you in mind. So thanks for being with us today. And I think you've chosen a great Sunday to be here because, as Mike said, we're starting a brand new series called Eyewitness. And the reason we've called this series Eyewitness is because we're going to follow along through the book of John. And John was, in fact, an eyewitness to what Jesus did, to what he heard, what Jesus said. He watched with his own eyes. He touched the things that Jesus touched. This is a first-hand account that John wrote for us in the book of John. And this is a nice long series. It's a 7-week series where we're going to look at 7 what John called signs that point to one life-changing truth. And to go along with this series, what we've created is a 42-day devotional guide. And we're just encouraging you to read along through the book of John with us. You can grab one of these at the end. I think they'll be at the back there. There'll be some out in the foyer. But we really want to encourage people to take this and to work through John with us because we really do believe that that the most important spiritual discipline that anyone can grab hold of is engaging with the Bible for themselves. And what this does is it takes the book of John down and breaks it into about 4 to 41. There's a little different thing on the last day. About 41 sessions. It's not a huge amount of reading to do every day. And it gives you some thoughts to glean from, a prayer focus, a couple of questions to help you sort of process what you've been reading. And we just encourage you to journey with us for 42 days. And hey, I know in this room there's some people and you guys you've got Bible plans and you're killing it and you're working through the Bible and you've been doing that maybe for year after year after year after year. Hey, that's fantastic. But I also know that there's a whole bunch of us that we struggle with this discipline. And so, hey, here's a chance to engage in something for the next 42 days. Or maybe you're here and you've never read the Bible before. Hey, this is a great place to start. And you might say, well, Clint, I don't want to read something if I don't know that it's true. Hey, a lot of what we read isn't true. The litmus test for what we read isn't whether something's true or not. We read a lot of fiction. Who knows what you're reading sometimes when you read articles, even in news sites and stuff these days. So don't let that put you off. Just engage with it and maybe see what happens. So, hey, we'd love to put one of these in your hand. So please do grab one of those on your way out. But what we're going to do each Sunday is the book of John's actually centered around these 7, what he calls signs. And so each week we're going to look at one of those signs. And the last one's going to be on Easter Sunday. And the sign is the resurrection, right? So if you've been around church a while, you would have figured that one out. That's why the series has started this week and is going to run for the 7 weeks. And when John wrote his account, there's 4 accounts of Jesus' life in the New Testament, one by Matthew, one by Mark, one by Luke, and one by John. When John wrote his account, he actually wrote it with a purpose in mind. He didn't just write down a series of stories. He actually tells us in John chapter 20 why he wrote his account. And this is what he says. He says, Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. And just notice, firstly, he uses the word signs. He doesn't use the word miracles, but even though each of them is miraculous, John intentionally chooses to use the word signs. He says, Jesus performed many other signs. They're not all recorded in this book. What he's saying is, hey, I've purposely selected the ones that I've selected. There's a reason that I've selected those ones, and that's what we're going to look at. What it also helps us understand is that Jesus' miracles weren't just random acts of kindness. So it wasn't Jesus walking down the street thinking, I could do something nice, Oh, those people are being good, I'm going to do something nice for them. There's actually depth and meaning in behind the miracles that Jesus did. And I think the reason John calls them signs is because signs point to something. If you see a sign, you don't normally, it's not the sign that's so special, it's what that sign points to or what that sign represents that's actually meaningful. And what John does such a good job of, and I think the reason he calls them signs, or one of the reasons he also calls them signs, is because John's desire as he writes this isn't that we'd be enamored with the miracles, but rather would be enamored, would fall in love with, would want to know the miracle worker. A lot of people get caught up on the miracles, but John will say, no, don't get caught up on the miracles, because while the miracles are special, the miracles in and of themselves are actually signs to something so much greater than any of the miracles. And so he calls them signs, because signs point to something. And then he goes on, and this is his statement of purpose. He says, but these, the ones that I've written about, are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and by believing you may have life in his name. He says, I've written this out because I want you to believe what I believe, that Jesus is the Son of God. And I want you to get what I've got through believing. I've found life and life to the full, and you can find it too. So he's not writing this as like an account that's sort of just out there with no intention. He's clearly got an intention as to what he's writing and what impact he wants it to have. And I just want to pause here for a moment and talk about this word believe and the word faith, because they're words that we use like frequently in normal life, right? We might say what we believe. We were in our workplace. We might say, hey, I believe that this event took place. We were in our family. We might say, I believe this happened. But the problem when we transfer those words into a church setting, into a theological setting, into a religious setting, people get the words all weird and confused, and they go, well, what does believe mean? What does faith mean? Well, I want to suggest to you that faith and believe, the way that we generally use it, is how it should be used in a church setting, in a religious setting, in a theological setting. See, a lot of people think that this idea of belief, it becomes this immaterial, like this thing that's out there. But I want us to understand that when John talks about believe, when we use the word believe when it comes to Christianity, it's the same as what we should believe when we use it in any other setting. And when we use the word, what we believe in any other setting, it's normally the reason we believe something to be true is because there's evidence, right? When I believe this is true, it's because there's evidence. See, I believe that overnight France beat Ireland in the Six Nations and now look most likely to win the tournament because the app that gave me the score is reliable. Did I watch the game? No. Was I there? No. But I saw the score, I've read an article on the game, and now I believe that's true. Well, I believe that there's a whole lot of storms and stuff hitting the coast of Brisbane right now, not because I'm there. None of us are there, but most of us probably believe that this is true because we've seen videos and photos that are coming through on social media. We've read reports of what's going on, and so we just kind of believe it's true because of what we've seen and what we've heard. And so when it comes to believe, we believe based on evidence. And we gather evidence through what we see and hear ourselves, right? When you see something for yourself, if you hear someone lying, you believe that they're a liar because you've seen them lie, right? If you believe that something's going to happen because someone's told you it's going to happen, it's because you trust that person. We believe based on what we see and what we hear. And we also believe based on what we're told, on what we read and what others say. But when we believe based on what other people are telling us, or what we're reading and what we're hearing through other sources, we base it on the authority of the person who's giving that information, right? We base it on, do I trust the person who's telling me this? A lot of us, teachers, have an incredible amount of influence, especially teachers who teach sort of 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds at school, because they believe everything that comes out of their teacher's mouth. In fact, I remember when I was young, I believed something that my teacher said. I went home and my teacher was wrong, but my mind was wrong, because I'm like, how can my teacher possibly be wrong? But teachers have this huge amount of influence because of the position that they've got. When you hear something, you're like, is this true? Can I believe it? Based on the reliability of the source. And we all know that person who's really good at exaggerating stories, right? And when we hear a story from them, we kind of know, oh yeah, there's probably some truth in there, but there's a whole lot of embellishment that's going on around it. So I kind of believe it, but there's probably some stuff there that I'm not so sure about. But our belief is based on evidence. In my family, at my house, there's something that I do that really annoys my wife. Okay, there's more than something, but I'll tell you about one of the things. Okay, I haven't got time for the list, but I've got one. And one's this. At night time, I like to help do the dishes and get the kids involved, and we stack the dishwasher. And my thinking and my plan is, hey, if we load the dishwasher, someone's going to have a drink later, someone's going to use a plate, there's going to be a few more dishes. So instead of turning the dishwasher on right now, if I just wait until I'm about to go to bed, I can get those last few cups, whatever plates have been used, put them in the dishwasher and turn it on. And the reason this is important is because we have like kids that are rostered on to empty the dishwasher in the morning. Okay, so if the dishwasher gets loaded at night, turned on at night, when the kids get up before school the next day, there's a dishwasher that they can empty and the whole system works really, really well. But if the dishwasher doesn't get turned on at night time, the kids don't have time to empty it before they go to school and the whole thing crumbles. And it really annoys Mindy that I say every night I'm going to turn the dishwasher on and then, you know what's coming, right? I forget. I don't. And she gets up in the morning and she gets the kids to do the dishwasher and they get the joy of the day because they open, yes, it's still dirty, and they can just shut it and they don't have to do their job, right? It's just how it goes. Now, Mindy can't just go to bed and be like, I believe Clint's going to do it, 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 and then wake up in the morning and it's going to be done, right? Because that's not belief. That's hope. Do you know what I mean? Because the belief is, maybe I need to text him. You know, like, it's hope. And this is where we get confused sometimes when it comes to Christianity and when it comes to faith. She can't just like do mind games and say, no, I believe. It's like you either believe or you don't believe. It's like if I were to ask, hey, guys, can someone please give me, I need $100 right now in cash, right? There's some people in the room, and you're like, cool, man, I'll put my wallet, I'll give you $100 cash, here you go. There's other people, and it's like, shut up, go away, I'm giving you nothing. And then there's other people that are like, I really want to give you $100, but I can't give you $100 because I haven't got $100 on me. Right? You can either give it to me or you can't. And no matter how much you want to be able to give it to me, that's not going to make $100 turn up in your back pocket, right? Because you've got it or you don't. And that's the kind of thing with belief. I believe this or I don't. And yeah, there's a bit of a spectrum like, yeah, like I mostly believe it. You know, maybe, just maybe, I've got a little bit better with the dishwasher. Maybe when Mindy goes to bed now, she's like, there's probably a like 50-50 chance that Clint's going to turn the dishwasher on tonight. But I can't bank on it. Right? If you want it done right, you've got to do it yourself sometimes, yeah. But I just want us to understand this word, and as we talk about believe through this, and what John wants us to believe, it's not like he just wants us to be in this place, like, I don't want you to simply hope that it's true. I want you to believe. I want you to know. I want you, based on evidence, to know that Jesus is the Son of God and that you can find life in His name. So what we're going to talk about today, we'll just go through these, methodically as they come through in John's account, starting with the first sign, working through to the seventh sign. We're going to talk about the very first sign, and if you want to know what the first sign is, it's when Jesus turns water into... Who knew that? The first sign, Jesus turns water into wine. Like, most of us, people aren't wanting to put their hands on something, not in the ears, but like, most of us probably knew that, right? When as soon as we see, what did Jesus turn water into? No one's like, fish oil, orange juice, Coke, that's how Coke started, no. Right? Most people, whether you know about the Bible or not, they kind of knew that Jesus turned water into wine. And that's kind of what John expects from the audience that he's writing this to, because this miracle was so well known that as we go through it, we'll notice he doesn't even say, then this crazy thing happened and the water turned red, or the water turned this and this will happen. But he just assumes that the readers know that it's the case. Let's go into what John says. He says, on the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. So that means John was actually at this wedding. John was part of the festivities. John was there. He knew what was going on. As I said, he was an eyewitness. He's recording something that he was a part of. When the wine was gone, people were having a really good time. The wine had been drunk. Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. This I just feel it's interesting. Like Jesus' mum, Mary, something in her knew, hey, that when there's a problem, when there's a situation going on, a person we can turn to is Jesus. Well, we don't know how she knows this. Someone actually showed me quite a cool cartoon after the first service. The reason that Mary knew Jesus was different was when she tried to bath him the first time and he just stood on top of the water. So that was quite good, right? But how did Mary know that this was the case? But she knew that in a situation where things weren't coming together, hey, a person I could turn to was Jesus. We had a situation this week where Mindy was cooking something. She's like, I need some sweet chili sauce. Hey, Clint, can you go down to New Wood and buy some sweet chili sauce? I wonder if Mary had that predicament when Jesus was at home, right? She's baking and she needs something. Jesus! Need some sweet chili sauce. I'll cover my eyes. I'll close my ears. Can you just do your thing and create some sweet chili sauce for me? That'd be really helpful. Right? I don't know how Mary knew Jesus could do this. But she knew there was a problem. It's just she turns to Jesus and says, hey, Jesus, it's no more wine. And then Jesus responds. He goes, woman. First tip, don't do that when you go home today. If you get asked, woman. No. And again, we can look at this and think, hey, he's been really rude here. Now, I want to explain to you it's not. The word's been translated right. It is woman, but we don't quite get the context of it. That when Jesus says woman, he doesn't want to say mum because they're in quite a formal setting. So the word he uses is actually a formal word. It'd be like us saying to someone, our lady. So he's not actually being derogatory to his mum. He's being respectful and kind and nice. So just to clarify that, he says, woman, why do you involve me? My hour has not yet come. And Jesus is saying, I came to save the world, not to save wedding receptions. I'm like, this is important for you guys, but I've got an assignment way bigger than how this goes. And also to understand, to contextualize this, at this point in time, historically, the way that weddings work aren't quite the same as we do now. Most of the time now when we have a wedding, right, there's a ceremony that's followed by a reception and then everyone goes their own way. That's sort of the way it works. At this time, weddings were sort of often feasts that lasted multiple days. Okay, so that's probably how they ran out of wine. This thing was going for a while. It was just happening. Time's still going to come to finish, but we've got the situation, there's no more wine. And so Jesus says, why do you involve me? My hour has not yet come. We don't get told about any more dialogue. We don't get told if Mary just gave him the eye. We don't really know what, but we know that Jesus' mother Mary then said to the servants, just guys, do whatever he tells you. Do whatever he tells you. Which, hey, we're not talking about this today, and this is the way that this passage is often taught, and there's a lot of truth in this, and there's a lot of gold in this. But when Jesus tells us to do something, like, we should probably do it. Because oftentimes something incredible comes on the other side of our obedience. But back to the story, because I want us to focus in on what's often overlooked and not talked about when this story is told. As Ms. Mum says to the servants, do whatever he tells you. And then John gives us a piece of information here. This is what's often overlooked. Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind that were used by the Jewish people for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. The 20 to 30 gallons part isn't often overlooked. People go, wow, that's a lot of water that these guys have been asked to go and fill. So when Jesus asked them to do something, he wasn't just saying, can you fill up this little jar? It's an easy job. It's like, I've got these massive jars that need to be filled. They didn't have a hose they could just go and turn on and then wait for a long time for it to be filled. And that's what was, when Jesus asks you to do something, no matter how hard it is, do it. Great things will happen. And that's true. But what's often overlooked is what these 6 stone water jars were. They were the kind that were used by the Jewish people for ceremonial washing. So what these jars and what this water represented in this case is all of the Jewish ceremonial ways of doing things. To understand how Jesus sort of fits into history is in the way that our Bibles are structured. We've got the Old Testament and we've got the New Testament. The Old Testament is all about God's relationship with Israel. And in the Old Testament, God outlines these ceremonial processes that people are to go through. He gives the law and what to do when you break the law and all these ceremonies that people are to do to have a right standing with God and to be okay with God. But also built into these, it's so revolutionary. They were incredible for their time. Because there were health practices that kept people healthy. There were a whole lot of things that just kept people safe that were built into all of these laws and regulations. So they were quite incredible. And what this water and what these big sort of jars represented was that ceremonial way of life. But what Jesus would later go on and say is that he came to do something new. He came to do something better. He says, hey, that was the way that things were, but in me, I'm going to establish a new covenant, a new promise about how people can be reconciled with God. And it's not through ceremony, it's not through rituals, it's not through practices, but it's all about what I'm going to do for you. He says, well, what John's telling us when we understand what these jars were, that they were these ceremonial jars and what they represent. We understand, hey, these actually represent the old way of doing things because Jesus is coming to do something new. The ceremonial system will soon be outdated and replaced with something better. F.F. Bruce, a scholar who wrote about this in his gospel, in his commentary on the Gospel of John, he says, the water provided for purification as laid down by Jewish law and customs stands for the whole ancient order of Jewish ceremony, which Christ was to replace with something better. So Jesus says to the servants, these ceremonial jars that are used for ceremonial practices, I want you to take them and I want you to fill them with water. And so the servants did, and they filled them right to the brim. Then when they'd done that, Jesus told them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. So he doesn't tell us what miracles taking place in these jars. He just says, hey, no, just draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. The master of the banquet was essentially the person responsible for how the whole party, reception, banquet goes. If the banquet goes well, they've done their job perfect. If there's a disaster, they're the one who's in trouble. So Jesus says, hey, take it to him or her potentially and say, hey, let them test it. So the servants took the drink, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, although the servants who had drawn the water knew. So the master of the banquet's been given this drink. He's got no idea where it's come from. Everyone else knew this is water that's been miraculously turned, but he's like, oh, let me try this. And then this is his response. After trying the drink, the master of the banquet called the bridegroom aside and said, everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. So this is what you do, right? This is what you've done, maybe. You've had friends over. You get the real nice wine out first. You get the expensive stuff to start. Oh, everyone's blown away by how good it tastes. After they've had a few, they don't care what it tastes like anymore. They just want more oftentimes, right? So we'll get the cheap stuff and give it to them because they can't taste the difference now. He says that's the way that things go. That's what normally happens. But you have saved the best until now. You brought out the average stuff. Now you've got the best. See that this statement doesn't just refer to the wine, but it refers to the jars and the water and the ceremony. Because God did something special. God did something that was needed for the time when He introduced all of that. But now, He's bringing His best. Now, He's doing something new. Now, Jesus is ushering in a brand new covenant, a new way of relating to God, a new way of doing things. You see this switch, this this miracle of taking the water into wine, it was more than just a miracle. It was more than just Jesus coming and helping out at a wedding. See, it was more than a miracle. It was a sign. It was a sign. It was a picture of what Jesus was going to do. He was going to take something that was good and actually introduce something even better. And it just strikes me as, I wonder when John figured out the sign here. Well, what I'm certain of is that at the time of the event, the time that this took place, that the disciples saw nothing more than the miraculous take place. This was a cool story. And the party kept going and everyone was happy. It was a miracle. There's no accounts in any of the Gospels of Jesus sitting down and talking to his disciples and explaining this, that this was more than a miracle. But at some point in John's life, maybe it was as he got older, and he reflected back on the time that he had spent with Jesus as an eyewitness, watching, seeing, hearing, touching, being there, that he realized, wow, what a way for Jesus to introduce himself. Everybody saw the miracle. But there was something bigger that Jesus was doing, because this wasn't simply a miracle. This wasn't a random act of kindness. This was a sign that was pointing to Jesus' true intention, to Jesus' true identity. So John finishes this little section by saying this: what Jesus did here in Cana, Galilee, was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. See, John wrote about these 7 signs pointing to one life-changing truth, because he wanted his readers to believe what he believed, so they'll experience the life that he received. And as we go through these 7 signs, my hope, my prayer, our goal in doing this series is that all of us, no matter where we might sit now, no matter what we might believe or not believe right now, is that we too will believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and that by believing in his name, we will experience the life that he has for us. Let me pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for John. We thank you that he was an eyewitness, that he saw and he observed, and just as we push back on things that we find hard to believe, that he would have pushed back on things that he find hard to believe too. Yet through his life, he had such a belief, such a conviction that you were the Son of God, that all he wanted to do was help others come to that same belief. And Father, I pray you can help us to bring our questions, to bring our doubts, to bring our skepticism. But Father, I pray that as we read through John, as we look at these signs, we will see more than miracles. We will see that there are signs that point to who Jesus really is. And I pray that we will become people that aren't simply enamored with the miracles, but we grow in our love and we grow in our trust of the miracle maker. Amen.